Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody, to another Wednesday night of fun and technology. This is Bob Hollis here on behalf of California Capital. Glad to be back with all of you again this evening. For any of you that might be joining us for the first time or just in case you need a review, as a reminder, everybody is muted by default. The system holds up to 1,000 people, and that keeps the background noise down. We have about 130 registered for the class. Anyway, so you come in by default, but that doesn't mean I don't want questions. Questions are what really help all of us learn. So if you have questions as we're going through things, please enter them in the questions section and just hit send. And I have a panel open in front of me, and I'll try to address those as they come in. If we start getting too many in one short period of time where we get backed up and not cover everything I'd like to cover tonight, I might defer some questions to the end. And if I don't get to those for some reason, well, I can stay on a little later, but I'll make sure we post the answers somewhere for anybody who needs to get off at our scheduled time of 8:30. We'll again take a 5-minute break at approximately 7:30, halfway through, for people to refill their coffee mugs or water, or take a bathroom break, whatever you might need to do. And as always, we'll be recording. So I'll be posting these on the website, and I'll show you again where that is in a moment, but it's pretty easy to find because I moved everything over to our class website platform. All right, with that, let's get started. So tonight our focus is on themes, but as a reminder, California Capital brings all of these programs to the community for free, and I met them a couple, I guess about 4 years ago now at a conference, and when I learned what they do, and they expressed interest in me teaching some classes or helping small businesses get off the ground, I was very interested once I learned more about the organization. So I volunteer my time, but it's important for them and for their funding that we get the review forms turned in at the end of each session. And so I'll show you where those are again. But as a reminder, they have business loans, business assistance, contracting, training for people who want to do business with government, and of course a lot of workshops and events like these. So I encourage you to visit the site, take advantage of all those services, and they should be able to help you get your business in the right direction. Okay, enough with California Capital. But I do miss being there with all of you, for those of you who've been with me physically in classes before. But obviously they don't have the capacity to have 129 people in a classroom. So this will do for now. And it keeps me home up in the mountains, so reduces greenhouse gas and traffic time, which always makes me happy. All right, so just a quick review for our site for anybody who might have missed a class or two. Bakersfieldrecycles.com is our domain. Now, related to some questions that I've received, I want to clarify something. If you were to try to sign up for the forum, or try to log in on this site, this is different than your student site. This is the class platform site. So you would have a separate login for this or for your own site, for the student site. So you can come in and create your site. I know a lot of people have been doing it, so everything seems to be working pretty smoothly. But to help people, some people were signing up for their site and creating a site and then coming back to try to sign in on the bakersfieldrecycles.com URL. So to help people find their sites, I created a student site directory. So you can click here and here, let's see how many sites have been created so far. Well, you can see here. So here's a list of all the sites that have been created by students so far. As you can see, a lot of people are jumping in and having fun with it. I'm glad to see that. And that might help you find your site. And then you can say, click on the name here. And by the way, I set all these up to not be crawled by search engines, because we don't want to start getting, optimization for somebody looking, say, for Three Springs Pottery coming to this development site. So all the sites by default show as not telling Google not to search or crawl the site, basically. That once you come into your site off the directory, you'll see down here on the right there's a place where you can sign in as a site admin. and that would be the easiest way for you to make sure that you found your login information correctly and are going to the right place. And then again, session recordings are here. So I need to get last week's up, but if you want to review the content for last week, it's just about the same. All the main components are the same as the one we did last year. So you can go down here to session 2 of 6 from last year, installation of plugins. And this evening I am recording, but if I don't get it up in time and you need to review some materials, here's session 3, introduction to theme design, which is what we were doing tonight. Okay, so let's talk about themes. A few of you have asked for specific themes. If you did, I installed them, so they should be available to you now. And I'd like to point out here, if you go, this is the theme section. So normally, if you were a WordPress administrator on a regular WordPress site, so you have, say, your own freestanding site somewhere, or you're hosting it on GoDaddy or something like that, then you have a page that looks like this, where you can, once you log in, you come down to themes and add new to add a theme. Now, again, since you're on a hosted platform, basically, with a WordPress multi-site for the class, you won't have an option to add a theme, but when you go here to log in on your dashboard, it'll look something like this. You go down here to Appearance and Themes, and you'll see a page that looks like this. And within this page, you can choose which theme you want to activate on your site. And you can see some of these are themes that have been requested through the theme request form. And I've added them in so that anybody who wants to use them can use them. So once I activate a theme for the whole network, it'll be available in your theme options. And to remind you of how easy it is to change themes and what will happen, and I heavily encourage experimenting with this stuff, because you'll get a real feel for how it all works and a better understanding of some of the basic simplicity. So for example, here's a site, our class site with our schedule on it. And if I were to change that theme, I can go back in to here. There's the theme we're working with now. And this would be a good example. I mentioned in our last class that there should be some indicator up here to let you know what page you're on, but we had identified that it didn't do that. So right now, if I click on, say, session recordings, it's going to keep that tab green. So from a user interface experience or UI UX, I can glance there and I know what page I'm on. Now the one that we were showing last week didn't do that. It wasn't showing what page you're on with any kind of identifier by color. It just worked by hover. And so I used some theme software that we're going to look at in a couple of minutes, and I went in and I changed that setting, uploaded the new theme, and then to change it, all I had to do was go to, so it was this one. So here I'll just activate the old one again. And WordPress is somewhat modular. If you looked at the file structure, you'd see each plugin is in its own folder, each theme is in its own file folder, and they have filing systems within them with other components. So it makes it easy to just, a theme is like a layer. Think about it like a layer of paint with some, I guess, structure and layout to it. But it's like a skin. You can change it without needing to change all of your web content. So now that I did that, if I were to go back out here and refresh, you'll see that no longer shows because we just loaded a different theme. I like the other one better, obviously. That's why I did it. But in the meantime, let's just take a look at how another one might look. I'll just randomly grab this kale here. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about in a little while is widgets. And widgets are the places, like think about them as blocks on the page. So if we were to look at the page out here, this is a widget area. This happens to be our right sidebar. But you can have widget areas on the left sidebar as well. You can put widget areas anywhere throughout a theme. Then that gives you different places to put content. So if if you don't have content for those widget areas, they'll either be blank or they'll show something by default until you put content in. So let's take a look at what you would do with that. So if we're here, and right now we're on a page, and if we're talking about widgets again, widget areas over here, if I wanted to add new content here, I wouldn't do it directly in the theme. The theme would give me a widget area, and then I can go into a page that looks like this with our current theme. So if I logged in here and I go down to Appearance and Widgets, here's that right sidebar. This is where I would change what shows over there. So let's just say, for example, that I wanted to have, here's an archives widget. So I'm going to pull it into that widget position, and you can slide them all around, put them where you want. And then it's asking me giving me any options there. I'm just going to put demo for a title, and I can choose which pages to show or hide it on. So if I wanted to only show a widget on one page or so, I can choose select all to hide, and then just unselect the one that I want to use show the widget on. But we'll just show them everywhere for now. So I'll click save. And now if I were to go back out to the home page and refresh, there's the demo widget we just created, and that's archives, so that's any posts that would have been made in May of 2018. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that again because I don't want it there. And so we'll go back to our widgets page. And if I want it gone, I can just slide it back out and it's gone. And you don't need to save that. Once you remove a widget, it just saves itself. So now if we were to go back out and refresh, it's gone. So widgets are created, the widget areas are created by the theme developer. And then the site administrator puts the content into the widgets, the widget areas. But as you can see, that would have a huge impact on how a site looks. And in the themes that I build myself, I do something a little different. So I give everybody the option of multiple templates. So right now we're using a default template that showed that sidebar widget area on the right. But I could also say, let's show a left sidebar page. So I'll go here and choose left sidebar, update. And now if we were to come out and look, it's going to look pretty crazy probably. But you'll see instead of there being a right sidebar here, there's going to be a left sidebar. So when I refresh, oh, it didn't move. Oh, that's the wrong page, isn't it? So we were on, I don't remember what page we were looking at. Was that class schedule? Yeah. There we go. So you can see that it put the sidebar to the left. So you can choose where you want sidebars, left, right, none at all. You can choose the full width of the screen or just a certain part of it. I think this template is set for 1100 pixels or something like that. But those are all options determined either by the theme, by the coding, or within options that you can select from within the theme. Okay, so those are what widgets are when we talk about widgets. And ideally, you'll have a theme that has a lot of widget options. But I'll show you how far those range. So if I go back here to our widgets page, you can see all these widget areas I built in. So I created all these. There are probably 30 of them. So there's a left sidebar, right sidebar, 4 different places in the header to put things. These are menu above widget areas, menu below widget areas, menu below full width, content widget areas, content below, widget below content full wide, sitemap above the footer, footer below. So you can see all these different widget areas that I created when I built the theme. You usually won't get that many. That's one of the reasons I like to build my own themes based on what my clients would like the site to look like. And I'll show you some software to do that in a little while. But you don't need to use that software at all. There are other ways to do things. If you're going to go into something like this as a profession, then it's worth buying the software, because even if you can code, it cuts a ton of time out if you can start it with some software and then edit the code that the software generates rather than having to write all the code by hand. So it just gives you a huge head start, even if you're a coder. But most people aren't coders, and you don't need to be for this. So let's look at some of the options first that people can use for any site, and that they don't cost anything. So if we go back here to our manage themes, this is normally what you would see when you were going to add new themes. Now, again, you won't see that on your site because you'll see this, but you won't see an option to add new themes on your site because it's a network site. So I'll take care of that for you. Just complete the request form if you'd like me to upload any particular theme for you. All right, so let's say now I want to add a new theme, and this is normally what you'd see on your own WordPress site. I'll start by saying add new. Now, if I created my own theme in software, then I would upload that file. So I would just click upload, and I'll give you an example, but it's already been uploaded, so it won't work. I would just browse, and I know I have one sitting on my desktop right here, CalCap Draft 13, and that's a zipped file folder that has all the files necessary for the theme to work. So I created the theme in Template Toaster, which I'll show you, and then I zipped it, I saved it, and then I would just scroll to that and open it, and that would get to the position to then click Install Now, and that would upload the theme. If you're not either, that might be the way you do it too. If you were to buy a theme somewhere online and you wanted to add it to your site, you would do it this way. In most cases. In our current case, just email me and send me the file and I'll upload it for you. Now, the way you can do it if you're not going to either purchase a theme outside of WordPress or create your own is to choose from thousands and thousands and thousands of free available options. And so that's what we're looking at now. So rather than upload one, when I clicked add new, it brought me to this page. I can choose from any of these that just happen to be showing here, or these are the ones that we already have installed. But if I want to add new, here's popular. I'm sorry, we didn't install all those. Those are featured. So here's 3,105 popular themes. So we can add any that we like. So just as an experiment, I'm just going to randomly grab one here. So here's Righty. Okay, and I could read a little bit about it, if I want to really drill in. If that's what it looks like, that's actually kind of ugly, in my opinion, so I'm not going to bother with that. But we'll just grab something else here that looks a little more interesting. Okay, let's say, here we go. I don't know much about this. We're experimenting here as we go. Normally, though, you would hit some, you can preview it, you can learn more about it, see some of the details. So you can see that I added it, and now I'm going to network enable it. And this one is called Flash. All right, so now if I go back into my Manage Themes page, I'm going to refresh to show the one we just added. Here's Flash. So instead of having our CalCap theme activated, I'm going to activate Flash. And by the way, I could have done a live preview first, but since we're on a development site, I'm not too worried about that. Well, you can see here something that popped up. This theme recommends the following plugins. And so these are probably all free, but these would be things that work with some of the options that are generally given with the theme. So that's not uncommon to see something like that. If I go back now and refresh, okay, here's what our theme looked like a moment ago. Now if I refresh, there you have it. So you can see that changed the whole layout and what it looked like. It's mostly a black and white thing though, so I'm not too keen on that, but you get how it works. It moved the menu up here to the top. It added a title and a subdescription. It looks like it's adding a shopping cart. All right, so that was one of the features. And the menu looks like it's not sure. Oh, here's what it did with the menu. So it laid it out across the top and then split it because it had too many options or too many menu items. But you get the idea. So changing a theme doesn't mean you have to change any of your content. It's just changing the way it looks, changing the overall skin that's laying on top of it. And now within that, now that we have this loaded, let's take a look at what widget positions are available. So here are the widget positions available in the theme that I created. If I refresh to see what's available in the theme we just activated, you can see what you have. So clearly many fewer options. You've got a right sidebar, a left sidebar, footer, and it looks like 4 footer sidebars. So based on what we looked at, you've got content up in the main part and then 4 sections along the bottom that you can put things into. As you can see, far fewer options. So like I said, that's why I like to develop my own. But that's not going to be the right thing for everybody. And these options might be sufficient. Or if you want a site that looks a bit different, then just install a different type of theme. So let's take a look at that again. So if I go back here to, I need to be on my network option. So now I'm a network admin, so I can do this again. So I'll say add new. And let's say we want something with specific features. I'm going to go over here to feature filter. And one of the things we're going to be talking about in a little while is accessibility. It's a big deal. You know, you want to be compliant. You want to be a responsible developer, responsible artist and publisher. You should try to be compliant with all accessibility guidelines. So you can choose as a feature accessibility ready. Okay, so I've got one filter applied so far. And let's say we wanted something for education. All right, so we're going to apply the filters. And here we are. So now we have all these sites that are recommended based on those filters of being accessibility ready and being geared towards being an education site. So I could choose any one of these. I'll just grab this one here and say install. And we'll enable it for the network. And now if I go back to manage themes and refresh, okay, here's the one that we just added. So I'll show you what that live preview looks like. So I could do live preview. It's still loading here. There we go. So you can see what it's saying that it would look like if we were to load this theme. So it moved our menu over to the left-hand side, moved the title over to the left side, put everything over here on the left. Apparently it doesn't have a right sidebar. And you can see all the different things that you can edit directly here, what it's trying to promote here in this case. So I'm used to looking at all the things that show whenever I do my own. The title, tagline. So these are things that you can customize in here. You can set an image for the logo. So you get an idea of how all this works. And that's with a free theme. So you can also do a lot with it. You change the anything in it. These are going to be CSS files. So if you have a person who can code for you, or if you want to learn a little bit about CSS and HTML, it's not that hard. You can change anything that you like. And some themes will give you options built in. So to show an example of that, I'm going to reselect the theme that I created here and activate that. All right, and then now because of the things that I built in, you can go down and choose theme options. And in theme options, you can control things like, you can read anything in here, different font sizes, image sizes, content, whether or not you want to show breadcrumbs on posts or pages, sidebar heading sizes, footer colors. So you can choose all these things as options without needing to know how to code, which is another reason I like to make my own for my clients. And that gives them a lot more freedom to go in and change things without needing to call me every time. But you'll see different options available for different themes depending on the features that they offer and build in. So that's one of the things you want to compare if you are going out and getting a theme that's free. Explore it a little bit and get to know it a little bit before you settle in on it as your long-term theme. And try a few of them because some might have great features and others might not. And I generally avoid any theme that has too many features built in. So you'll see some that might have a slideshow built in and others that might have, say, a photo carousel or a forum or something like that. But all of those features are available individually and independently and that work with WordPress. And if it gets built into the theme, it just makes that theme more complicated and heavy, so to speak, in terms of a site load impact. And it also leaves you tied to whatever they put in there. Whereas, let's say I have a website that features a slideshow, and I can choose from 10, 20, or 30 different slideshow options for plugins and use the one that I like the best. Whereas if that slideshow had been built into the theme, then I might be stuck with it if I don't know how to alter the code. So those are things to consider. But since they're free, the only thing it'll cost is time if you want to experiment with them a little bit and decide which one is the best long-term fit for you. Okay, so that's how you add a new theme. But some of the most important things in the theme are things that show within a page. So what we're looking at here, this is an Add New Page tab. So to add a new page, you just come down and do Pages, Add New, and it'll open a window that looks like this. And the reason I wanted to show this is, it's what you put on the pages that matters as well. So I'm just going to go with the words like heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Ignore my typos, please. I do. So people will be tempted if they're used to using an editor, WYSIWYG editor, say like Microsoft Word or Open Office or something like that. If you wanted to change the size of this, you'd be tempted to go in and say, oh, I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to increase the number of pixels and then I'm going to make it bold, something like that. But if you use that type of technique, your site will end up looking unprofessional because the titles and headings and all of those things won't be consistent. So the way that's dealt with in a modern website is you use what's called CSS code, which is Cascading Style Sheet. And that CSS code is all built into the theme as well. So what you would do instead is, I'm going to take this bold off. So this is what those would look like now, but instead of me changing them manually, I'm going to highlight that and say make that heading 1 and make this, see up here for the drop down, I'm going to format that as heading 2 and this will format as heading 3. You get the idea. And normal text would be just like that. That's paragraph style. So that's what plain text would look like. Now, if you're consistent with saying, I'm going to make all of the items on my page, any main subject areas as heading 1, which is what the search engines look for as the primary indicator of the importance of different terms on a page. So, for example, if I'm selling, I think we've used roses in West Sacramento as a previous example, I might want that heading to be roses in West Sacramento. And when a search engine crawls, it's going to look for things that are tagged as heading 1, and some read heading 2 as well. But heading 1 is what you want to focus on. Now, we'd also normally have our title in here. I'm just going to call this Demo page title. Okay, and then if I were creating a page, that's how you'd want to change those sizes. And that way your site will be consistent on each page in terms of the type of text that's used, the color, the size, the typeface overall. So if I were to click publish here, and then we'll go take a look at what that looks like. So we published, and we'll do view page. So there's heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. You can see they're different sizes, but they're consistent. Now, we normally probably wouldn't want them all to be the same color. And again, that's set up in the theme, and I'll show you how to take a look at that in a minute. Okay, and I'm going to go through a couple of questions here. Is there a place to learn all the widget acronyms and abbreviations? You know, there are new ones all the time. I try to avoid them myself unless I'm in a room full of people who, use them in every sentence. When I said WYSIWYG, that's what I referred to before. That stands for what you see is what you get. And that is what's commonly known as something where you don't have to write or type code to make something look different. So, for example, Microsoft Word has what's called a WYSIWYG editor, because you say highlight over it, turn it blue, it's going to look blue, and that's all you need to worry about. But I'll try to avoid that using any acronyms, or I'll explain what they mean. If there's other than that, I don't know. I mean, if you just do a search on any acronym within the context of the subject matter, you'll be able to pull them up. If you've got a specific question, I'd be happy to answer that. Can you change the color or font of a theme? Yes, you can, and it depends on if you created the theme or not, but it doesn't matter that much. So I'm going to open up. I'm going to open up another browser window with Chrome, and we'll come back to that in a moment. And I'll show you how you can see code right from the front end even to understand where it's coming from and how to find it and how to edit it. But there are also places within the back where you can go in through WordPress and you can edit code directly. You can also, there's a new section of WordPress where you can add custom CSS code, and that'll help you if updates take place with your theme. It won't change your custom code. That'll stay the same. So how do we find the URL for theme or plugin to copy and paste for you to provide to us? I will show you that right now. So let's see, we're going to jump over quickly here to, I have all this stuff staged. I just need to find where I put it now. Well, I know I had that open, but let's go back to, I'll just go out and open another tab here. So we're going to go to WordPress.org. So here is the main WordPress.org site. Don't go to WordPress.com. That's their hosted plan. That's similar to what we're using. And you can click on either themes or plugins. And since we're talking about themes today, we'll go there. But that's it's the same for plugins. And now that we've found them, let's say, for example, you wanted this ACE corporate theme. Then you can click more info, and that will give you the specific link. So now I'm cutting the link out of the top here, and that's what the link would be that you submit. And the name would just be ACE Corporate. So where you were to submit that form, it would say ACE Corporate as the title, and here's the link, and I would know that that's the theme you want me to install. And once I knew that, then I would go back here, and again, add new theme. I would do a search on it, pull it up and add it, or I could download it directly from here and upload it. So that's where you get that information. Can't you run into security issues or conflicts if you use too many plugins? You definitely can. Now, in general, WordPress is pretty solid in that regard compared to other content management systems. I've run into situations with both Joomla and Drupal where if you put in two plugins that are in conflict, or widgets, they call them different things on different platforms, then it'll crash the site. That can happen in WordPress, but it's pretty unusual. I run a program that it does the update, but it checks first. So it'll run a test on the update for any plugin. And if it impacts the site in any way, it'll then deactivate that plugin rather than update it or leave the current version in. The security isn't so much of an issue of too many, it's a matter of how good they are. The more you put into a site, obviously, there's more vectors of possible attack. So any plugin might have weaknesses. There's absolutely no such thing as a plugin or system that can't be hacked. It's just not out there. You do the best you can, like we've talked about before. You lock your doors and windows, but if somebody really wants in, there's a good chance they'd get in if they're willing to break things or violate the law or that sort of thing. And that normally, though, comes from, well, we have a whole class on security. If you generally keep all your plugins up to date and have them set to automatically update, so it's happening every day, then you're going to drastically minimize the likelihood of getting hacked. And that includes server software. So make sure that your hosting company is keeping their server software up to date, and then you're keeping all your software up to date. Then you're going to be generally safe. But there are always caveats because, as I mentioned last week, I think we were talking about Drupal, and we've just gone through what's called Drupalgeddon 2, where a major security flaw was found in Drupal, and anybody who was not running the absolute most up-to-date Drupal version of software on their site could easily be hacked and compromise their entire server. So every once in a while, one of those things pop up, and nobody knew before. I built 50 to 100 websites in Drupal in the past, and it's a good system and good people behind it. But you do run into bugs and flaws because things advance so fast. And there are tools, things like Kali Linux, that allow you to do a lot of different types of penetration testing and approaches. So the other way is through social engineering. That's typically how people get hacked other than software. I saw an example of a screenshot the other day where somebody had sent a text to somebody else saying, "Hey, I hope you can help me. I used to have your phone number and I set up XYZ site and I've got all my family photos there for my wedding and everything else, and I'm so upset I can't get to them anymore. And they want me to verify that it's me. I'm going to do that right now. Can you send me the little code that it sends you?" And, anybody who might see that and not think for a minute would say, "Well, yeah, sure, I'm going to help this woman get her wedding photos back. Of course I would." But then, obviously, that could also be used to hack one of your own accounts, and you'd be giving them the verification to let them change your username and password. So that would be an example of social engineering. But in general, I wouldn't worry too much about plugins causing security issues. And if they cause conflicts, if you install them just one at a time, then you can identify those issues before they become relevant and impact your site in any way. All right, that's all the questions right now. So, like we were just talking about, there are thousands and thousands of themes to choose from, and you can submit a request, and I'll upload them for you, and then just go back into your site and let's see if I don't remember which one we left live there. Okay, so we're back, except that we have this one on the left side now instead of the right, but I'll just go ahead and leave that there for our example. And you'll notice that if we go back home to the home page, well, we've got different stuff here now because we moved all of our sidebar items over to the other side. Okay, but that's all you need to do to switch or add a theme in most circumstances. And then you can customize those themes any way that you like, depending on what options they either give you within the theme or adding your own custom code. So I personally use my own software. Okay, we've got a request for the link for plugins and installs, and that's moved now, of course, because of what I just did. I apologize. But before the end of our class time here, I'll have this back where it belongs. So look at this column here, and you'll see we've got the first one, create a student site. The second one is a form to request a plugin or theme. So if you just click that, you'll see a form open up here. Just put your name, first, last, email, your website. Here's where you'd put in a theme request, so the name of the theme and the name of the link. And so there's plugins here and theme here. And then if there's anything you want me to know, like what type of business you're in, real estate or software development or whatever it might be, e-commerce, let me know and I'll try to find some other good things that you might like. Okay, so we got that covered. All right, so lots of things to consider with a theme, and one of them, especially if you're going to create your own, is the color combination that you want to use. And that's it has a huge psychological impact. If you do some research on colors, you'll find that different colors are tied to different emotions historically and iconically, but also psychologically. So they do studies where they show people, say, an all green room or an all blue room or something of that nature. And they'll even do like an MRI type thing where they take a look at their brain patterns and how they change and how it affects moods and things like that. So psychologists are putting a lot of time and research into those things for things like retail establishments. One of my former clients in Chicago, when I had my executive recruiting firm, was an interior designer named Eva Maddox. She's one of the most famous designers in the world. She was hired to rebrand all the Hallmark stores, for example, and the interior shopping experience. So what you have in Starbucks, and I think it started with Hallmark possibly, where you have what she called a branded identity. So your identity and your brand should appear everywhere that your company appears in any way. And that's why UPS Brown redid their whole offices to match the uniforms, to match the trucks. Any place you go in UPS, it's a common theme that affects both the building and the new, any kind of style or print materials that you put out. And so you want to think about color schemes and how they impact people. And let's see, we've got a comment here. So it doesn't look like logos get transferred over with a new theme, just content. Logos are stored as images in the media gallery in the library, and we're going to take a look at that in a moment. It's probably, if it's not showing, it's because it's either a header setting where you just have to tell it where you want it to be, or a different widget setting. So if you've got something called header and a place for a logo, it'll still be there. For example, if you switch your theme back to the old theme. In the new theme, you need to look at where they would put the logo, and you can upload it to that location or put the link in where they ask for it. All right, so talking about colors, you've got theme directory here. This is what we just looked at a minute ago. This is called Cooler, and this started, it's Cooler, K-U-L-E-R. That's what it started as. Somebody created this and just put it online for anybody to use for free, and Adobe ended up buying it, and now it's available through Adobe for free as well. And if you just do a search on K-U-L-E-R, it'll bring you here. And this allows you to choose colors and different combinations. So if any of you have studied art, as one of my daughters is doing now, you learn about all these different color combinations that work well together. So right now we have what's called analogies. And you can start with, say, any hex code. And I use a tool to identify colors as well. This is a free tool called Color Pick. If you do a search on I didn't mean to do that. I apologize. There we go. Color Pick with just COLORPIC. You'll find that as a free download. And you can create custom palettes here. So you can see here how I have a palette set up for California Capital. And these are all colors that I sampled from the website and saved, so that if I'm working on things for California Capital, I can know exactly what colors I should use. So it's giving me the hex code here. So let's just say I wanted to start with this hex code and build off of that. So I'm going to copy that hex code out. So that's 662534. And then I could put that in and say that's going to be my central color here. So I'm going to paste that in. Whoops, did that not paste? There we go. Okay, so that's the color it gave me, and then it it did all this. And you can start here and you can move those around to wherever you like, and they'll all stay colors that could work well together. And it gives you the codes down here so you can see what they all are if you were trying to create your own color palette. And then what you can do is create a new palette here. So let's say I'm going to create a new palette. Name for the new palette, I'll just call it Calcat Class. And then I can even sample the colors to add to the palette. So I'll click right here and then come here and say, whoops, that shouldn't be giving me a, okay, that worked. Oh. So use Control G to grab a color. So first select where you want it to be, go over and then Control G. Just added that to my palette. And let's say I wanted the other one, so let's just grab this one here. Again, Control G, and there, oops, click first, Control G. I'm sorry, these are conflicting a little bit because it's trying to do other things here when I hover over, but you get the idea of how it works. And that's how you can sample colors though. So if I wanted to know what color anything was on any website, I'll just grab the next one here. Say I want to know what color this purple is. You can see I can click this chip and just hover over, and now I can see that this hex code is 633663, and that's what was showing here when I was hovering over. So wherever my mouse is, my mouse icon, it's showing me what color that is that I'm hovering over, and I can grab that digitally. So here's yellow, FFFFCC. Hope you wouldn't be seeing that. Purple again, green. So whatever I hover over, it's telling me what color combination that is. Then I can go back to cooler, put that color in here, and then pick my colors and create a palette. And then I can go back to that palette anytime. Somebody asked about safe colors that would work on all devices, all resolutions. Yeah, I definitely recommend that. It's gotten better working with people who are used to hard copy print, where they don't make any consideration when they're setting up a design guide or a style guide for a corporation. They'll choose fonts that don't work well online, or they'll choose colors that don't render true online. And they're going to be a little different. I know if I do say I pull up two web pages and I sample the color on my Mac and I sample the color on my PC, sometimes they can be slightly different codes, but pretty close. But there are some colors that just don't work well on the web at all. So you do want to do that when you're figuring out what you're going to use for your corporate style guide. The same fonts and typeface overall that you're using on your hard copy materials, the print materials, is what you should be using in your web materials and your social media materials as well. It should be 100% consistent. And since the print world, hard copy, doesn't have any real restrictions, at least not in practical terms, then I would say make sure that you are compatible with safe colors. And you can see here that even in color pick, they give you an option of cyan, web safe colors, blue web safe colors, magenta. And when you're doing, so these are all web safe colors in that shade. And here's blue. So you can see these blues would work. So there's this blue happens to be 4 zeros CC. So 0000 CC is the hex code. So I would know that I could use that. And once I've chosen colors, now we just looked at analogies here. Other ways to do it are monochromatic, triad, and this color wheel is digitized, but if any of you have ever taken an art class, you're probably familiar with the concept. Complementary colors, so compound, so you can see all the different colors that would go together and look well together. All right, so that's the way I would go with that. And then if you're going to create your own, say now I've got my colors chosen, Now I go into my theme designer software, and this is one that I use that I like. It's fairly clean code. It's based off of Bootstrap, which is a nice code platform that's pretty clean and pretty light and gets the job done. And that this is a paid purchase software, though. It's not free. So you don't need it, but I'm going to show people how to use it generally so you can get a feel for it. So I already have something open here. Pop that up. And here we are. So this is the California Capital theme that we're currently working with. And to give you some idea of all the different choices you have when you're thinking about the colors that you want to use, you can start here with you can start with color schemes that are pre-built in. And obviously these are all web safe. You can customize and create your own themes. So if I were coming in here, I can go out, say, and sample another site and get the colors I want, create my palette there, and then I could come in here and create a custom scheme just for that website. And all I know is that I need to load that scheme, and it'll have me off to the right start immediately. So you can customize things here and change any colors that you want for your primary, secondary, success, info, warning, and danger. And these might seem random, but they're actually pretty standard for any website to have that kind of color options. And then here's where you would choose your fonts. I currently have a scheme called Mobius Open Sans that I've customized for a lot of my sites. Okay, so I'm just gonna cancel that. But that gives you a general idea of how you would lay things out. So you would just open it, then you can choose your layout. So whether or not you want a header, footer, all three, header, footer, menu, and how you want to position everything. Okay, and whichever one you choose is flexible even once you get there. So I'm not going to change anything in that. But you can then choose also your different body backgrounds. So all these different options can be done and customized. And I hope I'm not overtaxing my machine here. I don't want something to start crashing on me. But then you can do your page settings, your header settings. You can build in a slideshow, but as I mentioned before, I don't think that's a good idea. So I don't do that. Instead, I use a slideshow plugin, and that gives my clients the option to put in whatever images they want or change the slideshow tool that they want to use. If I went to header, you can see all the different options here. The position, I can insert logos or icons for social media. I can upload custom icons, set the height, borders, margins. Here's the menu. So this could be a week-long class in itself, just showing you all the different options in here. But the way I learn any software is I just go menu item by menu item, start with a blank slate and play with each item, each option until I see what it does. And you can get a pretty thorough understanding of the whole system that way. And then you'll find there's probably 3 or 4 things you use all the time. Now I mentioned even creating widget areas. It doesn't even take coding to do that. So here, for example, you've got your sidebars, so you can put how high you want them to be, and borders and margins and backgrounds and layouts and all of that. Again, widgets, those are your sidebar settings for any of the widgets here. So I could change how those titles look. I can change the way these boxes look. Content is how you want everything on the page to look. So I mentioned those headings before. If I go into typography, headings, you can see how I can set up all of these options for each heading. So headings 1 through 3, we saw that they were all blue, for example, for now. So before I make any changes, when I have a draft version up, I change it as something else. So I'm going to save this as 14. Okay, so I'm going to select that to cheat and take a shortcut. I guess is more accurate than cheating. And I'm going to call that 14 instead. And now I can make changes without worrying about ever losing that version that I just did. So it just changed over to 14 here. So now let's say I decided I don't like these colors for titles, or those headings, I didn't like them all being blue. I'll just go in here and change heading 2, color. And if I want to see what it is now, there it is. Let's say I wanted to make it match this menu instead. I can grab the eyedropper, go out and sample that color. or I could have got it from my color palette over here in this other tool for California Capital right there. So I got what I needed. I'm going to click OK. And I could see down here, if I go all the way down, that changed heading 2 to that shade of burgundy or maroon, whatever that might be. And now that heading would be a different color. So I'll go ahead and save that since I made a change, and we can just go ahead and demo it. So I'm saving that, and that's saving it as a workable file for this software. Now I'm going to export it, and you'll notice there's an option here to make it WooCommerce compatible. So I'll go ahead and do that, and it's exporting a zip file for me. And once that's done, we'll be able to upload that into our system and have a new theme available. It's taking a little while because of how many things I've got open all at the same time, but it's in the process of saving now. So I'll come back to that. It shouldn't take too long. Well, I need to wait actually, so it'll let me reduce the screen. There we go. Okay, so that should be available now. So I'll go back out here, and I need to go to my admin option, themes, add new. And here, instead of choosing one, we're going to upload one because we made our own. So I'm going to say upload, browse, and I save this right on my desktop to make it easy to find. There's CalCap Draft 14, open, install now. So the easier way, the faster way for somebody who knows how to code would have been to just go into the CSS and change the CSS for heading 2. But I wanted to show how to do it in a theme software for people who don't know how or don't want to code. That's how easy it is. And that's the difference between what was called a WYSIWYG option, which is what you see is what you get. So, it's all just visual here, as opposed to a coding option where you're going in and programmatically, or that's a bit of a big word for what we're talking about here. You're editing the CSS code directly to change the color within the code itself, instead of having the theme software do it for you. So now that that theme's enabled, then we'd come back here and go back to our theme options. If it looks like I'm moving something strange around on my screen once in a while, it's because I have the question panel open and you don't see it, but I have to slide it out of the way sometimes. Okay, so now here's our CalCap Draft 14. That's the one we just created. So I'm going to activate that. And then if I were to go back to, it's still going, there we go. I go back to our demo page. Remember how before it was blue? Now if I were to refresh, it's going to be green, as long as, match the header color, that maroon or burgundy. And so that's a lot better, for example, than say you had 150 pages or 150 posts on your website and you suddenly decide that you don't like the heading color. If you weren't using CSS, you would have to go in and manually change every page to highlight the text, change the color, go to the next page, highlight the text, change the color. But by using what's called cascading style sheets, which is a CSS is a type of code that is a front-end code that works with themes, by changing that, then everything that's called heading 1 or tagged as heading 1 will change, or heading 2 in this case, would change all at the same time. So you don't have to go through and change every single page. So that's more than you need to know, but it's good to know. You don't need to know how to create the heading page, heading colors and all of that and code. But what you do need to know is follow that procedure in the back. So don't manually change the size of text and things on pages. Use your headings 1 through 6 and your paragraph text and your excerpt text CSS settings. If they aren't what you want them to be, either ask your developer or go in yourself and change the CSS. And that might sound hard, but it's really not. I'll even show you an example here. So I'm going to I just copied this URL, and I'm going to go back to that Chrome panel we opened a little while ago. Paste and go. Let's give that a second to load. So inside Chrome, you can do what's called use inspect. So I'm going to right click anywhere on the page here. So I'm just right clicking, going to inspect. And now I can see what's making things do different things. So let's say now I'm going to click this little button right up here that allows me to select an item in a page. Then I'm going to hover over. Oh, I think I lost it. There we go. So now I'm hover over here heading 2, and I can see right over here in the code. Let me get that out of the way. I can see the code all right here. So that's what heading 2 code looks like. And I can go in and edit that and make it say or do anything that I want it to. And the same thing for the different colors. So you can, let me see if that'll open up better. So you can see here, when I hovered over that, it brought up heading 2, and I can see right here what that color is. Now I can go out to any website in the world, and if I want to see what it would look like as a different color, I can do this. So for the moment, I'm going to just click here, and I could change what that is. So what would that look like if it were, say, black? And black happens to be all zeros for hex code. You can use 3 or 6 zeros, and now you'll see that this looks black. So you can do that for any website. I could pull up the Nordstrom's website or the McDonald's website, and I can use this tool to change the way things would look, but that's only changed within my browser. If I were to refresh, it's going to go back to like it was. But if I wanted to change that in my theme without going in and actually changing, into the software, if I did it again, okay, I can copy all this out of here, starting right here, and I could copy it right into WordPress from the back end, and it would change it for me there as well. So I could go back into the theme, and then I can, well, not from here, I can go in and edit that theme code and add it on that way, or from within inside your own, if you were to customize. There's a place where when you go to customize a theme, it'll give you CSS. So you can just paste that code right into there to change it. And let me see if I can show you here. All right, so say customize. So anybody could have done that without needing to write any code if you just know what color you wanted it to be. And now I can paste that custom code in here. See, I just copied that right out of what Chrome gave me through inspect, and there's the colors that I added. Now if I publish, that's going to overwrite. Well, it's telling me I've got errors here, which isn't technically true. So I'm going to let it update anyway. It's picky. It just doesn't like the way this Crimson and Arial look, but it should be fine. So now if I were to go back to, say, here's our demo page, that should be black. There we go. So it's black now. So I just overwrote that code without needing to use theme software or know how to code. I just let Chrome do it for me and then copied it out and put it in the back. But that's way more than you need to know, really. All you need to know is kind of how to upload themes, and that you don't even need to know for our class. Just submit the theme that you want to use, and I will upload it for you. So I just noticed that we're at about 7:35. I'm going to check here. I've got 7:34 on my phone, so I'll go with that. I promised a 5-minute break, so we will reconvene here at 7:39, and we'll take a 5-minute break for now. All right, welcome back, everybody. Uh, so let's continue. I'll check questions here. Let's see what we've got. Okay, it seems like picking a theme and plugins take considerable thought ahead of time as to how you want your website to look, knowledge of what is needed if you're selling a course, product, giving an exam, trying to meet regulatory requirements, etc. Is it best to lay out your website manually first, then go to the themes and plugins? It depends. That's a great question, and it's an evolving answer. And I don't mean to sound coy. What I mean by that is, again, a lot of things that used to be done in the print world became pretty standard for designers. And when they started transferring their tasks to an online digital type of format, they tended to follow the same types of practices. So a lot of people would do what's called a wireframe in the design world, where you'd want to take a lot of time and you do storyboarding and you do a design and you do a wireframe and talk about with extreme precision, within pixels of what you want, everything you want laid out right on the platform. Well, that's all fine, and it might depend too if you're working in a group environment or not. The way I do it, I like having a live, call it a sandbox, call it whatever you like. I like working from a live platform from the start. So the first thing I'll do is get a theme in place that's at least visually usable as a working space. So I don't care that much when I first start about what the theme looks like overall, but I want to have a general layout in mind. And the way to start a lot of times is to look at other websites that you like. So scan the web, especially people that are competing with you, the same types of customer bases. And if you're trying to go after the same type of customer base, look for the biggest, most well-financed companies that you can find that are doing the type of work that you want to do, and look at how they design their sites. Because chances are, if it's, not everybody's a Facebook, multi-billion year company, but even mid-sized companies that do $1 billion a year in sales or 500 million a year in sales are probably putting some time and research into what should be on a website for that particular market. The same customers that you're trying to reach, whether you're selling consulting services or medical transcription services or have a hair salon or whatever it might be. So take a look at what the top people in your market are doing and take a look at the color schemes they're using, things like that. Now, you don't want to just copy somebody's whole style. That wouldn't be cool. But, blue is blue. If you notice that everybody in your industry seems to be using blue, maybe you want to include blue, but do something a little different to set yourself apart as well. But definitely from a function standpoint, you'd want to make a list of the different functions that you need. But as fast as it is to put a plugin in, I think about those functions, but I can add them as fast as I can think about them in some cases, and I just want to see what it looks like. So if I were thinking about, say, putting in a video gallery or something like that, I could think about what it would look like and like draw it out on a piece of paper or something, or lay it out in like Adobe InDesign or Quark Express or something like that first. Or I can just go add the plugin and throw in a channel, and I can do that faster than I could lay out an InDesign document. So I use it like a live palette. When I first get started on a website, I don't show it to the public anywhere. So in the back end, I would have it in what's called maintenance mode. So if anybody came to see the site and they weren't an administrator, they're just going to see a cover page saying something like this URL is under development and a picture of some mountains or something like that. And I leave it like that until I'm ready to show it to the public. But even for myself, I want something decent to look at as a working space. So I'll get creative. So I might have one concept in mind, and I have a generic template that is actually pretty close to this that I'll put up first. And I just use that as a place to start figuring out what kind of menu items I want, what content I want on each of those pages, what my call to actions are. If I've got what's called a funnel, where I'm leading people to a particular action, how am I going to lay that out? And thinking about the features and benefits and things that go along with the website. What services am I offering? What can I add to the website that would be additional draw to bring the type of people I want looking at the website? And when we talk about some things in our next sessions with outreach and monetization, we'll get much more heavily into that. So that's what I do when I'm thinking about different plugins and themes and colors and that sort of thing. I just throw something up there. I'll have a general idea in mind. So instead of using a wireframe and doing, say, InDesign and laying it all out there, to me, that's redundant work. And for me, it's harder to do it in InDesign than it is on the web. So I can create all this stuff directly on the web as my working space. So I think overall, it's important to think about your market and what your customers are going to want, or your client base, your constituents, whatever it might be, and make sure that you're focusing on those features. So, if I were doing an e-commerce site, I'd want nice graphics. I want it to load fast. I want the shopping experience to be smooth. I want to definitely have security in mind. And we'll talk again more about security for any sites that are doing financial transactions in our session on monetization. But so it depends on the person. If you want to just sketch something out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and play with that, or if you're great with InDesign and you're more comfortable with that, then you can do it that way. And there are even ways to take Photoshop type designs and integrate them right into the theme. And so Dreamweaver, for example, also works with all the different Adobe products, and they integrate together pretty well. I think it's more than most people need, and I try to never recommend software that costs money overall, and Adobe can get expensive. I've got a subscription because I use it professionally, and I've got a daughter who's an art major and an animator, so I don't want to restrict what we've got available here. But for most people, it's more than what they need. So that's my answer to that question. Sorry if it was long-winded, but that's generally my approach to things. I like a live sandbox, and I can just move things around inside the sandbox like we've been doing here. So I see it live as I'm making changes rather than needing to imagine what those changes would look like. But it depends on the individual and what they're comfortable with. Okay, so we covered the request form. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. That's our theme directory, Cooler, template toaster. Another one, just because I don't want to appear to be promoting any one brand or product. Art Steer is another one that's easier to learn than template toaster, about the same price, but doesn't have nearly the options. So, and the code is heavier and clunky. So I'm showing it to you, but if you were going to buy one or the other, if you're going to be doing a lot of themes, and if you're a good artist and you think you could do themes well, you can use this to add your own and sell them as well. So you can put themes out on a commercial site and sell your themes just like other people sell professional themes on WordPress. So if we went back, say for example here, what we're looking at here are all free, and that's again where you can have feature filters and that sort of thing. But if you wanted to, you can go to commercial as well. And here's where you've got commercially supported GPL themes, where you might need to pay something for these, but they might look really sharp and exactly what you want, that kind of thing. And if you're a good artist and you think you can build better or as good, or do something to differentiate yourself and reach a different market or whatever, you can also create your own themes and upload them and sell them. So that's another way to make some side income. So you can see here you can browse their themes and they're promoting them, and down here you could purchase. Let's see if we just check one here. I don't see the price. They're usually somewhere between $15 and $50 or something like that. Oh, here we go. So this is how much they charge for these themes. And here's a lifetime club, $249. So I'm not sure if that includes all their themes or whatever, but you get the idea. Somebody asked about if you create a theme, what about updates when WordPress updates? Typically, I've found that that's not been an issue. So, for example, the themes that I built in Template Toaster have continued working fine throughout WordPress updates. And the other thing that can happen is the software itself will update. So if you get, if there's something going on where, say, Template Toaster, this code that it generates isn't compatible with the latest version of WordPress, what they'll do is alter that code and update it, and then they'll release the update. And people get notices in advance. So if you're involved in the development world, WordPress will tell you, here's our beta, and you can have access to the beta version of WordPress before it comes out, and is generally recommended for what's called a production site. And a production site is any live site that's interacting with the world. That's called a production site versus a development site. So if you've got a production site up, then you can get the beta version, and you keep that on a development site, and then you can test all your software with that. And you can find out if your software is going to have any issues, and you can correct for those issues before the next version of WordPress comes out. WordPress is pretty good about that. That's one of the other things I like about them over Drupal and Joomla, is that they want everything to be, for the most part, backward compatible. So you could have big technology leaps that could cause issues with that philosophy, but so far it's been working pretty well. And WordPress is, I guess, modular is a way you could put it, where the plugins, operate independently within their own folders. You're not, mixing code together or having things being too dependent on each other, which is one of the issues I had with Drupal. To use a particular, well, I'm going to call it a plugin again, but it can be called different things, module or widgets, and whether it's Joomla or Drupal or WordPress, they all use a different word for things. So I'm just going to refer to Drupal's add-ons, we'll say, as plugins. So Drupal might have a plugin that everybody likes to use, but that relies on another plugin you have to have installed. And then that plugin is built off of two other plugins that you have to have installed, and that each one of those might have one or two. So to get one function, you might have to put in 7 or 8 plugins. And then if there's an update and any one of those plugins doesn't get their code updated at the same time, you have all these possible breaking points. And the people that use Drupal all the time will say, oh, don't worry about it. That happens all the time. Just keep using it. And then when something goes wrong, those same experts will say, well, what are you doing using a plugin that wasn't up to date? And so you can't win. So that was, anyway, with WordPress, that tends to not happen as much. So it's not been an issue for me. It could happen. It might depend on the software that's being used and what particular things are in there. But so far, so good. Okay, so that's the basics on themes, but there's some other things we need to talk about in regards to themes. And that one is, to get started, is a lot of the different regulations that come into play that people wouldn't think about when they're doing a theme or building a site. The first one that comes to mind for me is accessibility. And that's generally ADA related, if you want to use that overall term. But there's a standard that's called WCAG, and you can set different levels, for checking your site. And let's see, I've got another question that just came in. Is it possible to customize, alter a theme that we purchase? Yes. Now, that's a general answer. That's not an absolute answer. In general, when you buy any theme that's compatible with WordPress, it's going to be open source software, which means that you can access the code itself. So you can, even if you went in through the back end, like if you're using cPanel, you can go in through File Manager, and you can change any code you want in anything that you have loaded in your WordPress files. So if you know how to code, and you can look up hex codes, to see what different colors are, and you can change a font size from 12 to 20 or whatever you might want it to be. You can do it all manually right there. Some themes will give you options built in, like, for example, let's see back here. Well, that's a different place to customize. But you could also, I don't think it's going to show where I want it to, because it's because of the type of site we have set up here. Let me see what I can do. So if I go back here to, network admin, themes. Okay, and then, oh, you know what? I have so much security on this. I have that option turned off. Typically, there's a place here where you can click and edit any theme directly in the code, even from the back end of WordPress. But I'm a big believer in security. I'm a guy, I go to DEF CON every year, the hacker conference in Vegas, and I'm wrapped in Faraday cages practically. So anyway, I've hardened this site so much that that tool doesn't show anymore. But that's normally you can edit it through the back end. And then as I was showing with the theme that I create, you can go into, you get to the right place to do it. So down here where you can customize, and that's where I showed you where you can add your own CSS and override any CSS that's built into the style sheet. And then you can also go down here, and these are options that I built into my themes. And I don't mean to be promoting my themes, I'm just showing the variation of what different developers can do. So in the themes that I create, you can go back in here and change any of this stuff from the back end, and without needing to know how to code. And here's again another place where you can put custom CSS that would override anything in your in the other files. So if you already had something in there, say that came in from a program, and I added some different CSS here, it would override anything that was inherent in the theme that I uploaded. All right, so you generally can do it. Whether or not you need to know how to code depends on whether or not they build in these types of options for end users to use. So let's go back to web accessibility. And it's the guidelines are generally known as WCAG, and there's different levels, but it's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And W3C is the kind of overwhelming, I guess it can be overwhelming, the overarching organization that tries to put some governance to the web in ways that make it work well together, make all the different parts and pieces come together. So they'll try to establish and publish best practices for different things. Over the years, there's a wide variety of people represented in the W3C consortium, and they generally are good people. I mean, you're not talking about just people trying to make money. A lot of academics and researchers, and there are people from corporations as well, people from nonprofits, but all trying to work together and set standards so that when people like me or you come in and they want to develop a website, they have something to refer to as a resource. So that's what this is, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But you don't really need to learn all those as much as you might think. You don't need to become, a lawyer level of knowledge with this type of stuff, because there are tools out there for you to use. So if I go to, for example, back to our demo page, and I'm going back into let me slide some things out of the way here. And you'll notice when I'm on a page, I can click edit page here, or I can click edit this. They're going to take me to the same place. So here I am back in our demo page that we created a little earlier. And there's a tool here that I add in through a plugin. So there's a plugin called WP Edit, and I add that so that I can get this accessibility checker in for all of my clients. So what I can do there is if I were to be on a page and I click it, it's going to open this accessibility checker. And by the way, I've added that to our site. So over here, oh, that's all a mess now. Let's go back to this one so you can at least see the plugins. So down here is accessibility checker. And you can use this for any website. So you could take, the Google website or something like that, though there's not much to look at there. But any URL at all, you can click the accessibility checker, and you can put in an address. I guess we could do Facebook maybe. Okay, and you have different options here. I should have shown you, but it takes a little while to crawl. Let's see. Here we go. So we could also validate their HTML and their CSS. Here's where you can pick the level. Here's section 508. This is another section of government code that applies to what we're talking about. So let's try to do just that right now. We'll just do section 508 compliance and say check it. And I'm going to let that run. There we go. So here's where it's showing 9 known problems. and it's telling you what those problems are. And you can see most of this is probably beyond anything you'll need to deal with, but it gives you an idea of what it can do. So it can scan any page and tell you if there are issues. Most of the things you're going to see on your sites are related to like color contrasts and things like that that are pretty important and really stand out in front. But there's also a tool that you can use for that, and I'll show you that in a moment. So again, here's the accessibility checker. You can check any page, and you can do it from the back end of WordPress. And if you're using Firefox, there's a contrast checker that you can add. There's also one for Chrome. I use both for different reasons. I have different versions of each different browser set up for different purposes. So I have custom menus depending on what I'm using it for that day and that sort of thing. So here's where you can add a color contrast checker for Firefox. And let's say now we wanted to look at that and see how our color contrasts work. Well, let's just go back to this page, for example, and it's probably going to be fine from what I can see so far. I'll bet this gray gets popped out. I'll bet this one gets popped out. They're going to say that's an issue because there's not enough contrast. So we want to find out though, right? So I'm going to go hit my contrast checker, Firefox add-on, and there we go. So you can see here they found issues with several of these. So here's one here. If I click, it's not showing me a drop-down option for that one, but that's an issue, and that's probably this gray right up here. And sometimes it'll mark the page for you. Let's see if I got something in the way. Oh, it's a long page. But on the other websites I've looked at and used this tool, it'll circle things in red. It'll make a red square or rectangle, a red border around whatever content is an issue. And that helps you see what the problem is and how to fix it. And you can see different levels here. So if we go to a higher standard, you can see here what it's showing is the problem. Okay, and on most sites, again, it would show, let's try Artist here. So we'll go there and do the contrast checker. Okay, and we'll take a look at that. And that's you can see what the problems are, set it at either AAA or AA. Okay, so this is important to understand, but really just as a pragmatic point, all you need to do is make sure that you've got either a dark text on a white or light background or vice versa, so that you've got good contrast between them. And you can get a numerical score even on contrast, and it'll tell you whether or not you're above the score that you need to be. So that's one thing to pay attention to. You also need to put in what's called a COPA statement. It's a Child Online Privacy Act, basically, protection and privacy. And so that's related to your privacy statement. But what's gone on relatively recently, but is all the hot news, is this new GDPR. So GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. It initiated in Europe, but it's impacting the U.S. significantly. So technically any website visible in Europe should be compliant with this new GDPR regulation, which is redundant, I realize. But it's generally known as GDPR. So that's what you'll hear it talked about as. And it includes a lot of different things about processing and accountability and data protection and right of access, people's rights to erase their data, to remove it from your system. And they're pretty serious. Apparently some companies have already been lined up for lawsuits, and they'll probably go after the big companies first, especially companies that sell the data they collect, those that have the biggest impact on the consumers. So their protections are far more significant than what's ever been passed in the U.S. And until recently, California had the strictest standards, so everybody built to California spec. Now we're going to need to meet California spec and go beyond that to meet the spec for the GDPR. So you can imagine a lot of lawyers are going to be pretty busy, but it's also pretty easy to deal with those things yourself. There are typically tools that come out right away when something like this happens. So for example, here's a GDPR compliance checklist. So if you're curious about whether or not GDPR applies to you and whether or not you could face legal issues or fines for not complying, you can look at something like this. And this isn't one I'm specifically promoting. It's one that I found relatively quickly when I did a search on GDPR checklist. And there were dozens of them that came up. So you can use this one, you can find another one, but it'll walk you through and tell you what you need to do. And I'll show you another shortcut way to deal with these types of things in a minute, because we're going to be talking about a couple other tools, and one of them happens to have their new GDPR notice ready. So since we're still talking about themes, this is related to the theme, but other things, of course, are widgets. So you can see here again, the widget bar is a pretty important thing in terms of how many are available and where they are. If I were using my own software, like here, I can go to my widget areas options, and you can see all these different widget areas that I built. So if I wanted to put something here or here or here in our site, I can just slide it into that widget position. Same thing with any of these. So 4 different spots above the menu, 4 spots below the menu, 1 full width spot below the menu. So say I wanted to put a slider in above my content, but below the menu, and have it be full width over top of the widget areas on the sidebar here, I can do that. And then I have some down here at the bottom. It's a long scroll. So you can see here's content below, a widget below content, again full space, a sitemap above the footer, and here are widget spaces below the footer. And so those are the different options that you can do for yourself, and you can see, or if you're designing your own theme, but you can see that those aren't always available if you're using somebody else's theme. You have whatever they created for you, and you're pretty much set to that. Okay, so the other part besides the widgets is, of course, your media. So the images that you're going to use within your content can make a huge difference. You might have a website that's just all a little off-white or something like that with one logo or the name of your company, and then a big slideshow that is really your whole screen. And that can be any photos or things that you upload. So what really makes the difference isn't so much your theme design as the images itself. And let's see, can you place detail on your website that you're in compliance with COPA and GDPR? Is there a certifying agency for this type of detail? I'm going to show you that in a moment. So we're going to look at a couple of different image editors, and then I'll show you what they did on one of them, as they have their new GDPR policy up. I don't know if there's any certifying agency, but generally it's just making sure that you've checked off the different requirements. And some of them are pretty simple. It's not far off from what our privacy policies have been for a long time on different websites. It's just adding a few more things. And if anybody needs a generic privacy policy for the state of California that is not yet GDPR compliant, I have one that I'd be happy to loan or let be used. It was written by an attorney for one of my clients, but that client gave me the right to share that with others that might need it. And I'm probably going to have the same attorney update it to be GDPR compliant. And if they give that permission again, then I can share that as well with anybody in the class. Okay, so images make a huge difference. And even if you look at Facebook or any type of social media post, all the stats will tell you that if you put images or videos or something like that in your post, they're going to get a lot more propagation and be spread out to a lot more people. They'll just get more interest, and Facebook ranks them higher and spreads them out to more of the users because they think they'll be more highly entertained, and it brings them back to the platform. So remember, with things like that, you are the product, and everything you put up there is the product, and they want high quality product. So if you put nice images and things that get people's attention and videos and things like that, you're going to get a lot more action. and it also makes your website look a lot nicer. So you want to try to use the nicest, highest quality images that you can that won't slow down your website's load time. Now, I put things in automatically to help with that. There's something here called WP Smush that automatically optimizes images when you upload them. When you upload an image, it comes into your image library, and you can open it up and see a lot of different options for it. So it'll tell me here how large this image is. This one's 850 by 567. And when an image gets uploaded, it gets automatically created in different sizes by WordPress. So you'll have the full size, medium, and a thumbnail. And you can also custom edit within a page. So I'm going to close that. And if I were creating a new page, or say on this page here, let's use one more. We'll go back to our demo page. Say I wanted to add an image to this page, and I wanted to put it, say, to the right of this. I just put my cursor where I want it to be, click to set my spot, add media, and choose an image. And then I want to set the title. This is something that too many people disregard, but it plays a huge role in search engine optimization. Let's say this for an image about kids and recycling, and I want my site to come up if anybody does searches on kids and recycling. Then what I would do is call this kids and recycling. I would give it that title. I'd also put it in as alt text, and I'd put that in as the description. And that way, when a search engine crawls and finds that image, it's not seeing Bridgeport in my photo file number, which means absolutely nothing to it. I don't want to come up on a search for Bridgeport. So I want to change those to terms that people might be doing searches on, for which I'd like my site to come up in the top rankings for Google. And then determining where it lays out on a page matters. So you can align it left, and if you do that, it's going to word wrap right. And what that means is, like, if you look at an item on like in a magazine, they hardly ever have just the image and then all the text above and below and blank spaces to the right or left. So if you have word wrap right, it's going to show the image and then the text coming down the right side and then going on the bottom. And that's what would happen if you put the image to the left. If you put the image to the right, it's going to then word wrap left. You can also add a link, but I tend to do that later. I'll show you why, and whatever you'd like to do there. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that into page. And I see a couple questions here. Can you repeat the name of the image optimizer? I happen to use WP Smush, but it's because I have a subscription account to all of the WPMU dev plugins, and it includes WP Smush. But there are numerous others out there. If you just take a search in WordPress plugins for image optimization or just images, you'll see plenty of tools that are available for free. Someone else made a comment. I thought it just found the alt text, not the title. I thought the title was just the name it was saved as. Well, if you look at the title, it'll show in the URL itself. So if you were to, say, upload an image or hover, select that image itself, it could show the title there, depending on how you have your site set up. The alt text is what happens when it's hovered over. So if you hover over something that has alt text, that's what a screen reader will find. So if you, for an accessibility issue specifically, screen reader, if you hover over an image and it says kids recycling, it's going to be able to read that out. And that is also what will show if you hover over. Now, I can show you an example of that with this one. So let's I'm going to go back in and edit. And this is why I prefer to edit my links here. If I use this option, it's only giving me the edit tools that come with this image. So I'd have to go find the text that I want to include or the link and paste it in down here. It doesn't give me an option to just see what's there. I'm going to go ahead and put in alt text here. Kids recycling. Whoops. Okay, I'll save that in a second. And then you can do open a new tab, but we're not going to put the link in this way anyway. So this is the option you have within the photo editor itself. And I'll click update just to get that done. But what I'd rather do to link it is select the image and then go up here into my menu or my normal editing menu for the page and insert a link this way. If I do that, you'll notice it opens this window, and I can click here and I can choose from my pages. So I don't have to go find a URL to add if that's going to link to something else in my site. So let's just go ahead and link it to our demo page. And I can not going to open a new tab because it's on our same site. And then just click add link. And now that's linked to our demo page if somebody were to click it, which is going to pick it right back to the page it's on. So that's clearly a circular redundancy that's not necessary. Okay, so I just updated because I made a change. And then if I were to go out to that page, and let's see, what was that? I thought we had it open somewhere here. Well, we can do it this way. View page. And now if I hover over that image, it should show my alt text. I don't know why it's not. Anyway, that's how it's supposed to work. It would normally show like a flyout tag. It might still be cached, or I might not have saved that change after I made it. But that's what I would recommend. And things change all the time too. Google used to look for keywords, and so people totally optimize everything around keywords. Google figured out that that's all everybody's doing, so now they completely ignore keywords. And I have to be careful how I say that. It used to be that you could just type in what you want your keywords to be, and Google would search a site and say, oh, this person said these keywords are this. It still scans your content to try to find out the focus of the content, so it knows where you are, what information is relevant to the people doing searches. But it does it by actually looking at the content itself, not looking for what you said should come up, if somebody does a search. So that's what I mean. So when you do a search engine optimization analysis, I don't know if we've gone through that or not when we did plugins, but we'll talk about it when we do outreach and monetization, because it's important, obviously, to try to come up in front of people that are buying your products or services. So we'll take a look at SEO there, and in that case, you'll tell the search engine optimization tool what you think the keywords should be, and then it'll rate your page and tell you what you need to fix to increase the likelihood of you coming up on search results. So that's a little more detailed than we should get into in theming, but obviously related. Okay, so before you upload an image, you should optimize the image for your site. Then what I mean by that is, let's say if you take a shot of something with a big full frame camera, you're looking at large files. Like, for example, with my regular Nikon camera, I can take a picture and have it be 300 pixels per inch and create like a 5-foot poster. That's obviously way more than you need for a website. And if you have images that large, they're going to take forever to load. So you want to clean them up as much as you can before you even upload them, not to mention your server space and things like that. And so I use Photoshop, but there are several free options available. And I want to show you a couple of those. The first one here is GIMP. And I know it's a funny name. I feel funny saying it. But GIMP stands for GNU Image Manipulation Program. And GNU itself is a recursive acronym that is a GNU, not Unix. And this was created by Richard Stallman at MIT back in the 80s when he got at least the precursor of the Free Software Foundation. And he was a Unix programmer, and he wanted to create some tools that people could use without having to pay Unix licenses. So he created GNU. And then other people started building off of that. And this is done completely as just we love you kind of thing, from programmers and coders to the public and to society in general. So GNU is completely free, completely open source, or GIMP specifically, which is it's a takeoff on GNU. It's all open source, and it works on Mac, PC, or Linux machines, and it's a replacement for Photoshop. That doesn't have all of the in-depth features that Photoshop has. that I must confess, or at least concede, as I tend to promote free open source stuff whenever I can. But it does everything you needed to do for our purposes for a website. So you can download this and install it on your machine, and then any image that you're going to upload is probably, well, let's say a full HD screen might be 1920 pixels by 1080 is what you call it, or 1280 depending on your screen. That's a typical photo. If you put it at 1920 in a say a full frame camera, would be 1280 high, but you really only need 1080 for full HD. So that's what we're talking about. So you never need anything bigger than that. And so we're talking a camera image that's, could be 6 feet wide at 300 pixels. That's crazy large and way unnecessary. So you'd want to open that up in an image editor like GIMP, and then you can reduce it, say to, I don't know, maybe depending on the width of your whole page. If your page is only 1,000 wide and you've got a column on the right that's maybe 250 pixels wide. So the largest image you could possibly use for anything is 750 pixels wide. I would probably set it around 750 pixels. And it used to be people would say no more than 72 DPI. I'd say going to 96 isn't bad. We're getting a lot more high quality image screens out there, both on phones and in large desktop computers and that sort of thing. And some people are even using their big screen TVs. So 96 should be sufficient still. And so set it to 96 pixels and 650 or 750 pixels wide, whatever you need it to be. And do that in your image manipulation program first. So whether it's Photoshop or GIMP, if there's something that came built in with your operating system, that works. And another one that's online, that's also free, is called Pixlr. So you can, let's see if they, well, you can see here there's free graphics, free fonts, free vector editor, and it'll let you edit images here too. So this one's more web-based, where you upload an image and then you can manipulate it the way you like and then download it. So here's the web app, for example. There's Pixel Editor, works in layers, replace colors, transform objects, or a quick fix for things. And I don't know if they've got a paid upgrade or something like that or not. But I've recommended GIMP for a number of years, including in my free open source class. But I've heard from clients that they also like Pixlr. So it's probably something worth giving a shot. All right, let's see if any more questions coming in. We're good to go. Okay, so now this also is helpful because when you first come to the Pixlr site, let me refresh. Oh, maybe because I clicked it already, it's not shown for me again. But they had an announcement that they now have their GDPR policy in place. So I clicked on that, and here's what they do for their GDPR policy. So now I assume Pixlr had an attorney do this. They're a pretty well-established organization, so I expect they had professional legal counsel. But what I would do is take a look at the checklist that we talked about, or any checklist. So here's the GDPR compliance checklist. Then you can take a look at some other large company who's claiming to now be GDPR compliant and see what they do. And you'll see it's pretty simple. Summary of how we use your data. So you need to tell people how your data is used. What does the policy cover? What information do we collect? How do we use it? What's the basis for the use? So if somebody is, say, subscribing to a newsletter on your site, you've got a legitimate reason to use that. And you can, I don't want to do that. We'll say remind me later. But don't do that too often, folks. Too many people I know, well-intentioned, hit remind me later too many times, and they get hacked or lose their system because a large portion of those updates are related to security issues that have been resolved, and you need to get up to date before the hackers find your vulnerability. So I'll be doing that as soon as we get off the line here in a few minutes. But you can see here what is available and what they did, and it's not very long or extensive. It's all in pretty common language that most people would understand. And so they're saying that this is their new GDPR compliant statement. You can see there's not that much to it. So the way I would typically do things if I didn't want to hire an attorney is I would look at theirs, I'd compare it to the checklist and say, yeah, it covers everything. I'd look at a couple others and say, yeah, it covers everything. Think about what my site does, and maybe I collect a username and an email because people are setting up a site, and we need that. The legal reason for that is so that they can log back into their site and edit their site, and we don't sell that information to any third party or give it to any third party. So I would state that, and how we use it, and just all the things that are in here. So if I do that, then we're pretty compliant. And I know WooCommerce, the e-commerce plugin that is the most popular on WordPress, also just recently came out and said they've updated. They're now GDPR compliant. And I think the deadline is in July, but there'll be people lagging. There have been laws like this in place for 5 to 10 years in California, and there are sites out there all over the place that don't even have a basic privacy statement and aren't in compliance with COPPA. But the penalties have been pretty almost non-existent. Apparently, if you are caught in violation and somebody complains about it, at least for the California stuff, you get a letter, and then you have something like 90 days to comply with the letter or something like that before there'd be a fine or anything else. It might even be more lenient than that. And it's pretty easy to comply. As you can see with this privacy notice, it's not very extensive, not a lot of legalese. It's a one pager basically. And I assume they had professional legal counsel do it. But that's something to pay attention to. So we talked a lot about the mechanics and structure and process for themes. That next week we're going to do some more fun, pretty stuff. And that's where we'll be focused on Slider Revolution. So Slider Revolution is what makes some really nice looking, beautiful sites. And you can do tons of things with it. And we'll take a look at that next week. A lot of great special effects. You can do layers. I'm just randomly opening one here to see what it looks like. So check that out. Isn't that pretty cool? Look how they've got multiple layers here, creating an effect of how this comes together. See how engaging that is visibly. And obviously, that's what you want, is a visibly engaging site. You want people, when they look at your site, to want to go deeper, to go into it, to want to study it, and dig into the details. And they wonder, what's laying around the next link? What else am I going to see that looks so cool? And that's what we want our sites to look like most of the time, rather than the kind of plain sites. But even the structure you see here, how they've got different panels and images and large, easy to read text. This is a vertical scroll site, and it's also can be known as a one-page website, where all you have is a vertical scroll, and when you hit a menu item, it drops you down to that place in the page. And the advantage of that is that it means your page really loads one time, and then any other click on any other link loads almost instantly, because you're really just moving on a single page that's already loaded. So this is what we're going to use next week. Then we're going to focus in on some of these effects, and I'll show you how to do them. And it's all with one plugin here. So if there are any templates here that you want to try, take a look through these. This is on Revolution Theme Punch Examples. I'll go ahead and send that out through the chat box in case anybody wants to bookmark it. Feel free to go through and let me know if you see any themes from Revolution that you would like me to add before our next class, and I'll take care of that. And that way you can play with those as well. And it's really neat. That's you can see the motion. Watch what happens if I refresh here again, how the title text comes in at different speeds and things are in motion here that makes it look like you're in a room while seeing this happen. So you can see how those titles just slid in. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing next week. We're at 8:28 here. See if we've got any more questions coming in. No, looks like we've got it covered. So I'll be, this was recorded. I should have this up and last week's class up by Saturday morning. And if you've got any more requests for themes or plugins, please send those to me. And as we've talked about before, hopefully you're not sick of it right by now. Please remember to complete the SBA training evaluation form. So like I said, I donate all my time, all my hours putting this together and teaching it. I'm not complaining or bragging. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and I learn new things myself as I go. But it's important to California Capital because those forms that you complete are validated by the SBA, and California Capital gets matching funds. So for all the hours I donate, they get matching funds from the SBA as long as those forms are turned in. So thank you very much. Keep the emails and contacts coming, and I'm looking forward to our next session. Thank you, everybody.